So if you play Apex Legends, then you know there is two things for certain in this game. One is the game has a lot of cheaters. And two, there will always be people complaining about aim assist. But for this video, I'm just going to be talking about the controller aspect. Because I will be honest, as an MK player, I myself do complain about aim assist sometimes. Because there's genuinely moments it feels like it's very broken. So I decided, what if I dedicate a few days to playing controller myself? And see, is it really that strong, or are all MK players just a bunch of complainers? So I did do all this in ranked on an alt account because I don't want to have to face people good at the game while I'm trying to learn a new input. So I wanted to start from a lower rank, and my lowest ranked alt account was Silver 3, so I started from Silver 3. Which I feel like is fine because you can't lose RP in Bronze anyway, so I don't think it matters that I didn't start there. Secondly, the last time I played controller was back when OG Modern Warfare 2 and Halo 3 were popular. So that had to have been probably a little around 15 years ago or so. So there may be muscle memory left over, but it's been a long time. And for anyone wondering, I took a picture of my controller to put it on screen so you guys can see what I'm using. It has paddles on the back, but when I was growing up playing controller, I didn't like paddles, so I didn't use them now either. But you know, I had them, I guess. And I played on 4-3 linear with a small dead zone. So aside from the no dead zone, I was basically just like everybody else in the game. So starting from Silver 3, it took me only a total of 12 hours to get to Diamond 4. Now, I decided not to go to Masters, at least not for this video, just because, we all know how many cheaters are in ranked right now. And Diamond is when it gets really bad, and I just don't know if I want to deal with that. But regardless, I feel like getting Diamond from Silver on a completely new input in only 12 hours, that felt pretty good to me. And that was on my third day of playing controller. After my 3 days, here's the thing I noticed the most. I say this without trying to be egotistical, but even on a completely new input, I was still the best player on the team every game. And there's a reason why I say this, and it's not just a brag. It's that no matter your input, your game sense will always mean the most. And that is why I feel like I always did the best on my team. It all comes down to game sense. If you are bad at the game and you're blaming an input, you really might need to look at how well you're using your brain while you're playing the game first. I think regardless of what input you are, this should be your biggest takeaway from the video is game sense. I can't repeat that enough, but I hope by the end of it you just remember those two words. But now, let's get into the pros and cons of controller, and I will say there's not many pros, but there is a lot of cons. Now, I want you to keep in mind, I will try to be as unbiased as possible. I'm not trying to pick sides on M&K or controller. But let's start with the pros of controller. The first thing is, and this is what people complain about the most, up close felt very, very strong, almost to the point where I would say there was times I felt like I was cheating. Even with only 3 days of controller, I felt like my up close fighting was better than my 10,000 hours of M&K. And I already think that is just not healthy for the game. But I'm going to talk about how we balance this later near the end of the video, but for sure, I did feel like the up close fighting was definitely an issue. And I don't think it was necessarily because aim assist itself. I think it was the rotational aim assist. Now, if you don't know, controller on PC has 0.4 aim assist and controller on console has 0.6. On top of that, on PC and console, both have rotational aim assist. Now, what rotational aim assist means is, say someone is right in front of you and they're walking to the left, and then suddenly they cut their movement and start walking to the right. Rotational aim assist will correct your crosshair for you, and it'll start reversing the direction your crosshair is moving to be able to track this movement. Now, as an M&K player, I immediately noticed this was a problem because you just removed reaction time down to 0. Now, immediately why that's a problem is the average human reaction time is, I believe, 200 milliseconds. So automatically in a fight where people are moving back and forth, M&K has to face no reaction time while they have to have reaction time. And a majority of the time, those little times where you have to react are the moments that are going to decide whether you win or lose that fight. So basically, what I'm saying is, I didn't feel the aim assist value in itself is a problem, but I felt like the rotational aim assist was doing way more for me than it should be on a guy with 3 days of controller. And the other thing would just be the overall consistency in general. I felt like I never really had a moment where I actually hard whiffed. Every fight, I felt like I always at least did something and hit a good amount of shots. Versus when I'm on M&K, there is just going to be moments where I do absolutely nothing and I whiff. And I guess, that is just the downside of being 100% human input. Sometimes you're just going to be bad. And with that being said, believe it or not, that is the only pro I had on controller. Not a very long list, I know. Now, let's start off with the cons here, and I'm going to start off with the one that I found to be the absolute hardest, which to me was long range. And when I say that, I don't just mean like, say you're running a Sentinel with a 6x or 4 to 8x scope, where you don't even get aim assist. I mean just like your average mid to long range where you're trying to shoot someone a decent distance away with a R301 or something. Now I imagine if I did this more than 3 days, I would have had better long range over time. But I could not see ever how Controller would beat an M&K player at long range, because M&K just naturally has so much better recoil control. Even with a gun like the Hemlock, which doesn't really have recoil and it fires in bursts, so it makes it easier to manage. If someone was more than 75 meters away, I would probably hit like 1 burst total. Versus again, on M&K, like there's a chance even at a good distance like that, I could kill someone in an entire mag. That's probably the thing that like shocks me the most is now when I watch like the pro players who are good on Controller, like just to say Verhulst for example. I don't know how these people use Controller at long range. It genuinely felt impossible to me, and I didn't know what to do differently. Let's just say, you know, I was not having a good time trying to fight people who weren't up close. Secondly was the movement, and I think everyone knows this though. The movement just feels horrible compared to M&K. And the reason why this is such a bad thing to me is that on Controller, I felt as if I got into a fight and I like actually committed to it, there was no getting out of it if things went bad. Like I kind of have to fight to die, if that makes sense. On M&K, I feel like I can get into a fight, do some damage, and then use like M&K movement to actually get out of the fight and live. But on Controller, there was no like, I can do a quick 360, tap strafe, or a wall bounce, super glide, anything like that. It was either I won the fight or I die. I never had any in-betweens there. So in terms of just pure survivability, Controller just felt horrible. And again, I want to clarify, I was only on 3 days of Controller. So everything I'm saying is very anecdotal and I don't have a lot of experience, so maybe this gets better with time. A third thing is, I feel like there was a good amount of moments where aim assist was actually hurting me more than helping me. I had a good amount of moments where I'm trying to shoot someone far away, to the point where I need my crosshair in front of them so my bullets have time to travel then hit them, so you know I'm predicting their movement. And the aim assist was trying to pull back onto their body, which would make it so my bullets aren't going to travel fast enough to even hit them, if that's kind of making sense what I'm saying. It's like aim assist is always working so much to the point where when I don't want the aim assist to work, it's still working and griefing me. And it felt the same when I was fighting people inside knockdowns. Maybe I'm wrong here, but it felt like sometimes the aim assist would prefer to shoot the guy who's knocked down instead of the guy hiding in the knockdown. I wouldn't say it ever really got me killed, but it was definitely more annoying than it was helping. And my last thing I'm gonna say is it just was not fun playing Controller, I'm gonna be honest. My gameplay felt very one-dimensional. And by that I mean like, my only goal was really to try to just force fights up close and hope I just get a 1 mag. If you compare it to M&K, I feel like M&K just has so much more freedom and you get better movement. You're better at kind of all-arounding in the game, where you're better at range and you're still decent up close. Although up close, I will say Controller should kill you almost every time if they don't miss. You get to move while looting boxes, which is huge. That was definitely something I noticed also. If there's a box in the open, I just wouldn't go loot it because I know only M&K is going to get away with that if there's people around you. And overall, the gameplay just felt very sluggish. So here's my conclusion on this. Controller's pros. Very strong up close. I think to the point where I would say too strong and definitely needs some form of change. But the cons are movement, anything at range, aim assist sometimes works against you, and the overall fun factor. Which for sure, in the end, I would say M&K by far has the most advantages in the game. So for the question, which input do I think is better? Well, this may sound shocking considering everything I said, but I still think Controller's better. And the reason being is up close fights are basically the only thing that really matters in this game. Especially because of how easy it is with current legends in the game to close the gap between a mid-range and a close-range fight. Having that consistency up close just feels too important. Now, what I think a good solution to this problem is, I don't even think you really need to change aim assist much at all. I was talking about this with my Twitch chat, and I think a good solution would be to make the rotational aim assist have a 200 millisecond delay before it'll start correcting your crosshair to change directions. What this means is Controller will still have aim assist and it's still going to be viable, but it gives controller a reaction time similar to a human reaction time, meaning similar to M&K's reaction. I still believe this would make controller better up close, but I also think it would make M&K movement mean more and give M&K a better chance of actually fighting at that range. And for the most part, I don't think controller players would feel this nerf that much at all. That's my solution personally to make everyone happy, and if it was possible, I would say give controller aim assist on sniper scopes, and also somehow give them better movement. At the very least, the ability to loot a box while moving. I think what Apex should be doing is trying to better balance the inputs than they are now, rather than just having controller be super good up close and then horrible everywhere else. Where M&K is good everywhere else, but doesn't really have good chances up close. I think if we did that, we would just make controller more fun to play in general, which I think is actually going to be huge. That being said, am I going to keep playing controller? I think occasionally I will, and try to get better at it and see if maybe opinions change later on. But if I'm just trying to have fun on Apex, M&K 100% is the way to go every time.